Today, we're going to take a look at the current economic environment with respect to acquisition. It's changed so much over the last 3 to 5 years, and we've had to totally adapt to what this marketplace is really all about and how to get deals to the bottom line, how to get them closed. And today, I'm going to talk to you about how we've been reframing the future, how we repositioned ourselves to dominate the new acquisition economy. And I want to focus in on what does this really mean for you, because what we've done is to position you better to have a great deal of success out there. Acquisition has always been a team sport, meaning that it takes lots of different disciplines to totally put together a successful acquisition. There's legal, there's finance, there's accounting, there's negotiation, there's valuation, there's finding the deal. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's so many things or aspects of it that have to get done. And each one requires a little bit of a different discipline. And the same person who's good at one may not be good at any of the others. So it's always been a very rough thing for one individual to put together from start to finish, unless they were really adept at bringing in all of the appropriate talents to support them. So today, what I'm going to do is show you how we've overcome this challenge. It's a major challenge, but we've overcome it really very, very well. And I think you'll see that here today. Here's what we hope you'll learn today: why and how the acquisition marketplace has changed. What still works for the solo buyer, because a lot of you still are going to want to do that and be that sole person out there looking to put your business together with little or none of your own cash. It can still be done. It's just a little bit harder than it used to was. Why NDFC repositioned for today's deals and how to leverage this evolution for your own success. So this is our view from 50,000 feet of what we're going to try to accomplish today and make sure that you leave here with takeaways that are beneficial to you in these areas. Let's talk a little bit about the shifting marketplace. Why is today different than a few years ago? Well, interest rates are higher. Sellers want continuity, not just cash. A lot of sellers really don't want to leave their companies. They wanted something that's going to continue on where they'll continue to be of value. Others, of course, do want to fully exit. But in any event, they're going to want a continuity solution, one where they get the majority of their cash up front, and then whatever the tail end of the deal looks like, they want it to have continuity and perhaps even certainty. And investors, the sources of capital, demand speed, safety, and strong returns, especially the safety and the strong returns. Investors and lenders really aren't into risk. They want to minimize that risk. And having minimized their risk, they really want a strong return. So it's kind of hard to answer both of those, but it can be done. And we're going to cover that today, how we do it. And there's this whole new adjunct to the market. It's called PE firms and family offices. And they're actively hunting in the lower middle market, which means that if you want to buy a company of any size, you've got some formidable competition out there. You got PE firms that have funds. They're well capitalized. They're going to outbid you. They're probably going to overpay for some of the companies they're buying. You have family offices that are sitting there on top of pools of their clients' money. And they've decided one of the ways to put that money to work very effectively is find a middle market company to acquire and put some of their family's money into that. So those are sources of competition that weren't really relevant to you, just going back 3 to 5 years. And the sad news is the old playbook is fading. And the reason for that, in a way, is solo searchers are getting boxed out of the middle market deals. And I just discussed with you part of the reasons that that's happening. And sellers are prioritizing to sell their businesses where they prioritize teams with infrastructure. In other words, they don't want to sell to a solo buyer because they're concerned that there won't be continuity of the purchase. Who knows what your resources really are and how deep is your capability of handling every aspect of the acquisition, including the post-acquisition of actually running the business. And that's especially important if they're going to carry back some paper on the deal. And even if they're not, they still want to know their company is going into a strong future. It's their legacy. They don't want to see it upset. And so if you don't have a strong team behind you with an already established infrastructure for getting the deal done, you're going to be at a very distinct disadvantage. You need more than hustle. You need an engine. And that's what we put together here at National Diversified. We refer to it as PIBA Gold, where PIBA, P-I-B-A, is an acronym for Partners in Business Acquisition. And under that banner, we put together an incredible engine to handle all of the needs of the current acquisition marketplace. There are essentially two paths today to business ownership. One is the small company model or the solo model, the solo entrepreneur. And for this entrepreneur, the market is still pretty robust, where the revenues are under $1 million and the EBITDAs are under 350,000. So in today's world, you're talking about some pretty small businesses. They may have 3 to 5 employees. The owner everything is in their head. When you buy the company, you bought a job because the owner works there and he's not working on the business, he's working in the business. And you're going to replace him, step into his income. And that's a great start. For a lot of people, that's not a bad point of entry. But that's where the small company model has evolved to. You're going to have to deal a lot with seller financing as well as your own personal capital. Now, your own personal capital can come from you, from savings, from family, from friends, from relatives, but you're going to have some capital somewhere. And you're going to have an aggressive seller financing offer where the seller's going to carry probably the majority of the purchase price. And training and effort create a possibility. So Bazaar Financing is a wonderful training ground for this type of entry into the marketplace. But it does start to break down in today's environment when you get into the bigger companies because of the reasons I've just been explaining to you. What still works, i.e. for the solo acquisitions, they're lifestyle businesses. They have that potential. They're good first deal or learning platforms. And Bazaar Financing tools and hustle will get you there. And you can have a relatively lean bank account. And if you follow all the rules and guidelines in Bazaar Financing, you can still get a deal done. But if you want to gravitate into those bigger companies, this is not going to be enough. There are certain limitations with this model for scale, exit value, and professional management. Those aren't going to be there. The exit values are going to be hard to build and hard to scale to. And getting to a place where you have professional management is a building process. And maybe if you put 2 or 3 of these very tiny companies together and you do hustle your butt off, you can maybe get to where you have a decent sized company over a couple of years. So I'm not demeaning the past methods that we've used. They still work. They're just harder and they're a little less productive than they've been in the past, but they work and they'll get you there. The bigger model, the modern model, which we refer to as PIBA goal, Partners in Business Acquisition. You're now looking at revenues of 25 million with EBITDAs of 5 million plus. So now you're going after something that has the ability to create generational wealth for you. And the capital stack is going to be very different than the smaller company. It's going to be a lot of lender debt. There's going to be rollover equity that the seller is going to take part of his equity. You're not going to buy the whole company. You're going to buy, let's say, 60 or 70% of it. The part that they still own, they're going to roll over their equity into your buying company. So part of the buying capital is their own capital in this form of this rollover. You're going to have mezz lenders in the process. You're going to have secured debt in some of these. You're going to have some unsecured debt. You're going to have some equity that maybe comes from you, family, friends. But the point is you're going to have equity. And the beauty of what we do, we've created some incredible ways of creating equity that didn't exist before we structured the deal. That isn't our equity, but it looks like it is. And it works wonderfully to get everybody else who's part of the capital stack in line. Another part of this is proven management and big enough to excite lenders. See, in the little deal, it's really hard to get a loan because the lender can't make enough money on the loan because it's so small. And, even though they're charging you probably a higher rate of interest than they do on bigger loans, they still can't make any money on the deal for all the effort and residual work that they have to put into the maintenance of that loan on books. And so they're not excited about it. They can't make any money on it. So they're not even motivated to get it done. The only person motivated at the deal table is you. And that's not the way you want it. You want to get everybody excited. So the beauty of these bigger companies is they already have proven management, which should excite you because you don't have to go grunt away day to day in running the business. You're free to work on the business instead of in the business. And your lenders are going to be excited because you're doing a $10, $15 million loan. They can make money on that loan and they can get very excited about dealing with you. And the other part of this modern model is a full NDFC DLT. And this is how we address the fact that one person, the person who's I'm trying to think of the old phrase, the something that ends with master of none. In other words, you do a little bit of everything, but you're not a master of any of them. Well, that doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. The deals have become too sophisticated, even down to tax planning. Because if you make a mistake on any of these parts, the costs could literally eat up your profit. And you need the top experts in every aspect of what it takes to do these things. And in this bigger model that we use in PIBA goals, you literally step into ownership of a fully supported company because we're your partner after the deal closes. So we have a vested interest in making sure this company runs well. And because it came with proven management, we're going to run day-to-day operations. You already have a successful management team in there. And then with the support of the infrastructure that we put together, as you'll see in a moment, how we structured the company so that it's designed for success. And we'll show you again how we did that. But you step into ownership of a fully supported company where your partner, we're going to make sure it's operated well. You got a great management team, or we wouldn't have bought the company. So everything's designed for success. Now, part of our repositioning is going from trainer, which we were in bizarre financing, to a deal engine. In other words, we've downplayed training people to do this because of all of the disciplines required to master, to actually delivering a deal engine. So we developed the engine on a done-for-you basis, that the deal engine is architected and structured to get results and get it done. So for our standpoint, it's a rebrand, architecting wealth through strategic acquisition. So we don't look at ourselves as a trainer so much as a deal engine. And the idea is that we've architected it so that it all comes together for success. We did a website overhaul, for one thing, and that was to give more clarity to what we were doing. Our old website for National Diversified, people would go there, and because it had evolved over so many years, it was really hard for people to know what we actually did because it had so many different aspects to it. So we cleaned it down with clarity and power positioning. So jot that down, www.nationaldiversified.com. And when you have a chance, just go there and flip through the pages and see how we've repositioned ourselves. And you'll see a very different picture than what you would see, let's say, in normal bizarre financing. And we've refined our messaging for operators. And an operator is a buyer, okay, because you're going to operate the company, you're going to own it and operate it. For the sellers and for our capital partners, because those are the essential elements, and all of them have to win if the deal is going to be a sound deal. And that means you as a buyer, the seller has to win. And of course, the capital partners have to win too, because their money on a continuity basis is going to be invested and reinvested over and over again by our deal engine that's going to drive the acquisition process. In going from trainer to deal engine, we built an A team. And what do I mean by an A team? Well, let me back up a little bit. Because I've been doing this for 55 plus years, over that time, of course, some have come and gone over that time, but over the time, I built up a community, if you will, of absolutely incredible professionals who are at the top of their field. I mean, these are the A team. And I've asked them to partner with me in the newly evolved National Diversified and through this PIBA program. So we built up a board of advisors, for example. And I've asked these people to come on our advisory board and then be part of acquisitions when their expertise is what's needed to make that company successful. We already have in-house, as you'll see on the teams that we've built out, all of the expertise to get a deal done. But you know what? Even that's not enough anymore, because the seller is going to want to know, if I sell you my company, and especially if I stay with it and roll over equity, what are you going to do to grow my company? Why should I stay with you? So after the acquisition, what's my win? They want to know that. Well, we had to put together an answer for them. So right there, you can see how much the acquisition challenge has changed. It's not enough to come in with even cash anymore to buy a business, because then the seller wants to know, well, you got cash, this other people have cash. There's another group that has cash, but this group not only has cash, but guess what? They'll pay me my price. They'll give me my cash up front. They get to roll over my equity and have a piece of the business. And these people are strategic buyers. They have a way to make my company more successful once they're my partner and own the lion's share, but my minority share is now going to be worth a lot more because of how my strategic partner can make my business a bigger winner after the acquisition. So it's like everything else in life. Life and acquisition evolve. And as they evolve, they become bigger, usually more nuanced, usually more complex, and usually requiring a more sophisticated engine to complete them and make them successful. So we put on our board of advisors people who are not only experts in M&A and finance and operations, law, accounting, branding. Branding is a big one. And I'll tell you about a deal in a few minutes that we just completed the LOI on. We're right now putting all the pieces together, but what made the difference was branding. And again, I'm not going to get into it right now, but I will before we're finished. And being able to have these professionals, especially available in the post-closed era, is crucial to getting a deal closed. So we have on our board of advisors people who are with KKR, and those initials may or may not mean anything to you, but they stand for Kohlberg, Kravis, Roberts Company. These three guys were the kings, and in many ways still are, of merger and acquisition. They did the Kraft deals. They've done huge multi-billion dollar deals. They're the biggest name in it. Well, there are key people that they had as part of their organization that we now have on our board of advisors, so that we can reach out to resources that without those people on our board of advisors, we wouldn't have access to. We have people on this board from Deloitte, one of the major CPA firms. These are people who play critical roles in the management of these companies, from big law firms, from Fortune 100 companies that dominate a certain industry, where these people have the reach to pull together any resources we need, literally, to get a deal done. And that, and the knowledge that they have, the experience that they have, the innovativeness that got them to be a leader in their particular field, they're all available to us. Well, an individual can't go out and put that kind of group together. You can't do it. You don't have access to them. And the only reason I have access to them is because I've played at the top tier of this business for the last 55 years. And so I've met them in the most unusual places. Some of them I met because I appeared on the Today Show. And while I'm sitting in the green room for the Today Show, they're doing a bit on business. I'm one of the experts, but sitting in the room are experts from some of these companies. So I get to meet them. You sit there for half an hour to an hour because they want you there early, right? They don't want to worry that you're not going to show up. So there's nothing left to do but hang around and speak to these people, get to know them. And then out of that, relationships ensue. And when I reach out to them to be part of what I'm doing, I can get a yes, where if I wasn't positioned that way, I couldn't get that kind of a yes. So in a way, I've been very privileged. And I've taken advantage of that privilege to put together this incredible engine for you that wouldn't be available anywhere else. Another thing that is needed today is something called capital confidence. Okay, what is that? Well, you need to have reliable sources of capital you can count on. And so we put together our own $150 million fund. NDFC Capital Partners Fund is an LLP after that. But we give our capital partners who are putting up the capital two returns. They make one investment and they get two returns. One is they get a preferred yield of 12% per annum, payable quarterly, cash on cash. The money's tied up for 5 years. And the money's there. It's in the bank. And we pay them 12% per annum, but we pay them quarterly. But they also get an equity kicker, a very small piece of equity in all the companies we're acquiring. So that equity kicker, we position it because we know what the pro forma of the company we're going to buy is going to be. We know how big we're expecting it to be, how much increase in equity value we're expecting. So we give them enough of an equity kicker in that company that we're comfortable that equity kicker will produce as much for them or more as their 12% yield did in cash over the 5 years. So they make one investment, but they get two returns, one in preferred cash, the other in an equity that is going to be at least as big and probably twice as big as the money they made from their 12% yield. It's very attractive. Now, if we were to make them this offer, but we were coming from an empty bag, so that offer wouldn't mean anything. But they're able to go on our website. They're able to look at the documents we present to them. They're able to see the talent that we bring together, the Class A talent that have already done this, that we're putting them into this particular business. They've done it over and over and over again for hundreds of millions of dollars in companies before this. So they look at not only the deal and what's the deal's about in the industry and the business and its existing management team, but they look at the resources that we wrap around that company and they get very comfortable that this is a relatively low risk way for them to earn a cash on cash return of 12%. They get their money back in full in 5 years, plus they had their yield. And then they've got this equity kicker on companies that we bought to build an ecosystem that we're going to take public. All right. And so we're going to get leverage on leverage on leverage. They're going to have an incredible win out of this in addition to their cash on cash yield. So it's one investment, two returns, cash on cash plus wealth generation in their equity ownership. And this is one source of controlled capital that makes it possible for us to get deals closed. The second is longstanding lender and investor relationships. We've been doing this for 50 some odd years. Now, lenders have come and gone. I've outlived a lot of the people who've loaned me money, right? Where I had banks loan us money. They're gone. They were absorbed by some bigger bank, and we're still here. And those relationships are gone because when the new owner or the new bank came in, they swept out the old crew, put in a crew of their own. So now I don't have a relationship with that bank anymore. So I got to go rebuild it all over again. But the point is, there's been enough of the stability in the relationships over all these years that we know we can count on certain lenders to come through for us on certain types, certain size, certain industry loans structured in certain ways. And in order to get deals done, you need to have institutional trust that has the speed to close, because when you sign that LOI, you have somewhere between 60 and 90 days of exclusivity, which the lenders are going to insist on, because the lender doesn't want to spend time structuring and negotiating a deal only to find out that you don't have exclusivity and somebody else swept in and took the deal away from you. So if you're going to work on it, they want to know you've got an exclusive. So you've got to get lenders where you have institutional trust between you and them. And then the speed to close becomes a critical issue in actually getting the deal done. There needs to be a form of deal execution infrastructure. In other words, you can't wing it. Okay? You need templates. You need standard operating procedures. You need to have established post-close integration capabilities. These things have to be there. There have to be people with the expertise to execute anything and everything that these have a place in. And there needs to be continuity of that. It has to be a harmonious team of professionals who work together on a consistent basis. That homogeneousness works to get things done. And you need to have exit planning from day one. In other words, if you go into a company and you have a great strategy for buying it, but you have no idea how you're going to exit the company, that may not be a good play, because the profit comes not just in operating the business, because you make income when you operate a business, but when you sell it, you make capital gains. You create wealth at a multiple. So knowing the exit strategy, buying the business with the exit strategy in mind, structuring how you're going to build the business towards the exit strategy that you've developed is what enables you to make massive, massive profits on your acquisitions. And so your whole operation, your engine, has to be structured where you start with your exit and then you work backwards to how you're going to buy it, how you're going to operate it, and how you're going to zero in so that on the day you're ready for that exit, it's ready for the IPO, it's ready for the sale to a strategic buyer, it's ready for that because it's been totally architected and configured to optimize that outcome. So it's going to, in effect, be designed for either an IPO or a strategic sale, because that's where your big money is. If you sell it to a competitor, that's where you get the lowest amount for the sale of the business. Competitors, if they don't buy you, they'll buy another competitor. And when they buy you, there's no multiple factor when they buy you. They may get something called economies of scale because they're now bigger with you. They can get rid of a little of your overhead. They can buy more effectively because they may be doing bigger purchases. So on a scale basis, there's some synergy there, but it's very little compared to the strategic sale we're talking about or an IPO. So in order for this deal engine to really work, there needs to be a deal execution infrastructure, and that means specialized teams. We already spoke earlier where no one person is going to be an expert in all the disciplines required to do a truly optimized acquisition. And some of the teams, for example, the teams we have here at National Diversified, each handled by a person who's a specialist in that, has experience and expertise in that, loves that function, is great at it, starts with search and pipeline, building a pipeline of firms or companies to buy that have been pre-vetted and screened so that when we put them into our engine, we're optimizing every resource that we engage in order to get to the finish line with that company. And then the next part of it is valuation, deal structure, and negotiation. So once we've filtered it, screened out the ones that aren't particularly good, that don't meet our very stringent criteria so that we know we're going to win. When a company meets our criteria, we already know we have a winner. Then we have to create a realistic valuation for that company. The deal has to get structured so that everybody's going to get a win out of it. And then we got to negotiate that with the seller and his professionals. Then there's going to have to be serious. There's preliminary due diligence up here, but there's serious due diligence here, because now we've got to get people who are going to put up actual capital to feel very comfortable about this deal. Then it's got to get financed. All requires specialized knowledge, expertise, and experience. Now, even after we have all of these various teams doing their thing and moving it along this timeline for acquisition, there's pre and post acquisition support. In other words, these folks, as good as they are, they need support. They need people that help them within the framework. For example, with deal structure and valuation, there's going to be a legal adjunct to that. There's going to have to be an agreement written. We've got to do it in a certain state. We've got to know what the state laws are relative to the acquisition rules and regulations and all the things that go on. So legal supports any number of these areas, from finance to due diligence, supports them all. The same thing with accounting. So these are people we got to have in-house. We got to have people who are tax architects so that we don't end up doing a successful deal and then having to give all our profit to the government, right? That's not fun. And today, if you're not looking at the technological aspects of a company, you're missing the boat, because the company is going to rise or fall in the future based on technology. Can it use AI? Is it using these things? Are there platforms it should be doing business on? Are there things that can automate their processes, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, I could go on and on and on. So if you don't have all of these areas covered with high levels of expertise, you're not going to optimize an acquisition. You need to have experts in the area of the production and branding, sales, and marketing. In other words, these companies, however good they are when they come to you, you got to make them better. No company's going to be perfect. And you've got to be able to evaluate the state of the company and where they are. You need these people to do that. And then you have to architect the acquisition so that once you own it, all of these areas are optimized as you're performing all of these functions and then operating the company afterwards. So this is why you have to have, in today's world, a deal engine if you're really going to be successful in the M&A marketplace. Now, if you're going to acquire companies, you don't want to just acquire a company. You want to know that you're using a state-of-the-art business model to place that company in so that it has a chance to fully scale and grow at a level that it won't grow if it's just an ordinary, standalone, plain vanilla company. So the idea that you buy it, hope it grows, and flip it 3 to 5 years from now for more money, those days are gone. That doesn't exist anymore. You've got to take those companies and know exactly how you're going to scale them for growth. And today, the model we use is one that I invented. It's 50 plus years ago and have been improving and refining ever since, called strategic aggregation. So you buy a company for its synergy, not just revenue or EBITDA. Yeah, everybody that looks at revenue and EBITDA is important, because if these aren't right, you can't do the deal. But the real reason, the underlying reason to do the deal, is how you can make that company synergistic with other companies in your portfolio. And so today we feature ourselves not as a buyer of companies, but as a builder of ecosystems, of bringing businesses together that are mutually beneficial, that when put together, accelerate each other's ability to grow. So that way, if we're building an ecosystem and we acquire a company that's making a certain amount of money, literally the day after we own that company, we're going to start integrating it with that ecosystem, and we're going to start taking its clients and cross-marketing them to our other portfolio companies. We're going to take our portfolio companies and start cross-marketing their clients to that particular company. So we know before we acquire the company exactly how we're going to build the sales of that company. So it's hard to have a loser when you already have in that place the machinery to make it grow. See, you're in a whole different place when you got a deal engine. Cross-marketing, shared services, volume pricing, those are some of the advantages that come with strategic aggregation, putting companies into a portfolio, into an ecosystem of similar or related companies that can share clients, share services, share purchasing. So we have, and when we bring in the company, literally a pre-built ecosystem, which ensures their immediate growth. And then you have results that you're looking for here, where you want rapid EBITDA scaling and valuation lift. Because remember, if you're building a company, its value is based on a multiple of its earnings. So every time you increase its earnings, whatever it is, the value multiplication is 5 times EBITDA or 7 times EBITDA or 10 times EBITDA. Every time you increase the earnings of that company $1, you're increasing its value $7, $10. And then if you take it public, it's now going to be 16 to 18 times that you've created a value in equity for that $1 of income you create. So the leverage here gets awesome, but you have to have the whole system in place in order to execute it and have it be able to perform at every level to its optimum, and to make it easy to buy the company because you know how you're going to make it successful. You know how your investors are going to win. You know how your sellers are going to win with you. You know how you're going to win. It's all built, and it's there, and it's operating, and it's running. It's a deal engine. One of the forms of leverage that this system is designed to promote also is brand leverage. High profile partnerships with celebrity brand builders. Now, you've heard me maybe mention this name before, but I'm going to mention it, spell it for you, and then suggest you look him up on the internet later. Not now, because I don't want you to miss a lot of great information. But just write down his name. His name is Bernd Ullman, BerntUllmann, Bernd Ullman. He's referred to as the $6 billion man. He's been behind the most successful consumer goods companies that he's taken from 50 to 100 million in sales, which is a decent sized company. But within 3 to 5 years, he takes them to billion and multi-billion dollar companies because of the way he handles branding with celebrities. So he has the contact with the top 8 players in the country, folks who are the superstars. And those are the folks that when they endorse a brand, the brand flies. He's number one in the country of bringing those people in. And guess what? He's on our board of advisors. Why is he on our board of advisors? Because we met many years ago now. And he was top in his field, still is. And I'm top in mine, which is merger and acquisition. And the two of us love the opportunity to work together, where he is tasked with building the company internally from growth in sales and marketing. And I'm tasked with building the company through acquisition and merger, externally, buying companies and adding. His job is to look at where he wants to build the company and what kind of new product line does he want to add? What marketplace does he want to go into? What geographical footprint does he need a facility in? And he looks at his needs to build the company. And then he asks me if I can produce an acquisition that can fill that void. And not only that, the chances are pretty good. He knows the people who own the company that he wants to acquire because of his relationships and how he's built his reputation all these years. So the two of us work together as part of our dealing to look at how we build companies internally and externally. So this is part of what you have to do these days to know how you're going to build up this company so that when you're all done, that company isn't just some other company out there. It's a name brand with international recognition for being a quality product, an in-demand, cool, whatever the magic driver of that particular brand is, and that it has the right people that know how to get it branded at that level. Now, right now, you heard me mention that we're working on a luggage company, and Bernd is my partner, if you will. He's NDFC's partner in this deal. Okay, he's their internal growth partner. And he signed on to do it with me for this company. So the reason this company went with us, the reason they signed the LOI is the seller is going to maintain a 40% interest in the company. We're going to have 60%. So we'll own control. But the seller was so enamored with the fact that he's going to get Bernd Ullman to grow his brand and that he's going to have us to support that with growth by acquisition so that his 40% retention, he's looking at that going to the moon. So we outclassed any of the buyers who offered him more money up front than we did. But he could step back and see in an instant where if he came with this deal engine, with these people, with this plan, with the things that we brought to him and her, there was a brother and sister that actually owned the company, that they knew that this company is going to go to the moon. And it's exactly what they was looking for to build up this legacy that they created. And we're talking about a $50 or $60 million company that these guys built in the last 4 years. So these folks know how to design product. They knew how to sell, but they also had reached a point where they now had plateaued out, didn't know how to build it bigger, and they didn't know how to organize the company in a way, what we'll do post-acquisition to make sure it scales operationally to achieve the growth. So this is a $60 million company in revenue, doing $9.2 million a year in EBITDA. Bernd Ullman is bringing the multi-channel growth, and I'm bringing the acquisition, and we will be taking this company to the moon. Now, one of the things that I put into the right side panel is something called handouts. And in the handouts section, I put in there a debt that we supply to a lender that accompanies a loan package. So in other words, if we're going to borrow money to purchase the company, we have a complete loan package. It shows everything that's got to get done. It's got pro formas in it as to show how the company's going to grow, what we're going to do with it. It goes through an executive summary of the company. It shows the products, the services, and the existing incomes and the existing net worth and how much we're investing and how much we're asking for in money, and anything and everything that that lender is going to want to know is excruciatingly put forward to make their life easy because they got to know all this stuff to go to their loan committee, right? So we make it easy for them because we give them a loan package. It's got everything in it. But accompanying that loan package is this document, which tells them about NDFC, because a project, an acquisition, is only as good as the people doing it. If the people who are proposing it don't know what they're doing, then you don't want to be the lender. You don't want to be the investor. You got to have confidence that who's doing this, it's going to result in that the things they're telling you are going to get done, actually getting done. So we supply this to them, and it's in your handout section. But just briefly, I'll go through it very, very briefly. So it starts out with this page here. It goes through our 50 years of legacy, our high caliber leadership, how we reduce risk. It goes through how we use technology to have an edge in the things that we do, our board level bench strength. In other words, how we have our board of advisors of top minds from private equity law. Anyway, you can read this on your own, but it goes through how we set up a scalable infrastructure, what our proven leadership is, elite talent access, how we have access to talent for the growth of these companies that simply is not available to companies of this size because these people are too expensive. We couldn't afford them if we were only going to put them to work on one deal. But because we span them over many deals that we do, we can afford to compensate them at levels that make it worth their while to be part of what we're doing. And if you're a simple middle market company doing 60 or 100 or 200 million a year, you cannot afford these people. We go through our growth strategies and how we make companies grow, of which this little company will be one of them. When we talk about our strategic aggregation and our organic and external growth that split between Bert and I, our celebrity and branding leverage, our exit engineering. We go through all this and we give them an insight into what we do that isn't ordinary. We take them through our trusted capital model, our own fund, what that is and how it works and what it does, how we create capital confidence for them, private investor relationships and how we raise more money from them, institutional partners, because they want to know, are they going to have the only money in the deal or where else is our money coming? Well, this starts to give them some insights into that. And then we give them a sample acquisition and we show them how it works. Now, in this particular travel company, this is pretty much how it works. It's a $60 million company with a $9.2 million EBITDA, 40% seller rollover, that they're going to end up owning 40% of the company by rolling over equity in their company that they're selling. We go through what the opportunity is. We explain it in very short language, what we're going to do, and the A-team advantage. This is what we do. We put an A-team into that company to make sure it's going to succeed beyond the norm, well beyond the norm. And we discuss leadership excellence, who I am, what's my background, the team behind the curtain, who else is back there, and what are their credentials, and what do they do? Why choose us? Our high confidence execution, built-in exit strategy, clear risk management, alignment of interest, how we get everybody aligned so that the lenders win, the sellers win, the management team wins, the buyers win, and the FC wins. Everybody's going to win our formula. There are no losers because we're value-added buyers. We don't just buy and then from what we bought, build. We add value through the various business models that we put in that give them a better leverage of the resources that they already have and that position them to use the resources of other companies in the ecosystem in which they're going to be. So we try to give everybody a little bit of insight into us and what we do, and then what next, et cetera. So we put that into the side panel there for you so that you have it to read on your own. But basically, these are the items that are in there. Now, we have a culture of partnership that makes us very different than any other company that you would put in the category of a private equity company. It is what we are, but we're a very special vintage of private equity company. And at NDFC, we use the word partnership a lot, partners in business acquisition. But partnership isn't a tagline. It's a way of doing business. We view everybody as a partner. They're going to become part of our family. We're going to become part of their family. We're going to treat each other with respect and appreciation. We're going to deal with each other with integrity, fairness, the same way anybody who's part of a family would want the rest of their family dealing with them. It's the way that they would deal with their family. And we believe in this as a culture, as a way of doing business, because everybody wins together, which means that everybody pulls in the same direction with a total alignment of goals and aspirations. And even if your goals and aspirations are slightly different, there's so much alignment that everybody gets what they want as everybody else is getting what they want. So we win together. PIBA Gold Partner, which is an operator, the buyer of the company, they share in the upside. The seller's going to stay involved. In fact, they're probably going to be running that operations for the next 3 to 5 years. And we want that because the reason we bought the company is they've already proven they know how to run it. They're the ones who built it. They're the ones who made all of the EBITDA that we're buying. So we know they know how to do it. We know they're good at it, or we wouldn't be buying the company. But now they get to benefit from the growth into the future from not only their efforts, but from our efforts too. We're going to be a growth partner with them. Capital partners, the folks who put up money, whether it's debt or equity money, earn strong structured returns. In other words, we have very precise funding vehicles and methods that we know are attractive to people who have capital. And now it's a question of this particular deal, use that structure and that strategy, and we have the tools to attract them to the process. And our deals are big enough that everybody gets excited. Our internal teams share in success through aligned incentives. So the team that I illustrated to you before, it's full of people that are doing this work to acquire the company. Well, we want them to benefit. They get incredible bonus structures and even equity plays out of the deals that we do, so that, again, everybody's interests are aligned to accomplish the same results. And this culture, it fuels trust, it fuels loyalty, and it produces long-term value for everybody. And what does this mean to you? We just talked about national diversity, but okay, what does this mean to you? Well, if you're here today, you're either because you've gone through our Essentials program or our Pro program. So if you're still on an Essentials track, your solo deals are still possible. They're getting harder and harder to do all the time, but they're still possible. We're still a resource for the knowledge and the training and the information that you need to do those, and we're here to support that. On the Pro track, we're going to invite you simply to step up when you're ready. Anybody doing a deal, whether we are your PIBA partner or not, needs to know all of what goes into a deal, every aspect of it. Because otherwise, how do you monitor us on your account? Okay, we want to know we're dealing with knowledgeable people. So we like dealing with graduates of Bazaar Financing because we can speak to them in shorthand. They know what it takes to acquire a company. We're here to do it for them. It's a done-for-you service. And so it enables them to get it done with all of these top professionals and all of these resources that are being used to put it together without them having to do the work. But it's good for them to be able to know what we're doing on their behalf and why we're doing it, what the results are going to yield, and how it's going to materialize for them over the long term. So having our PIBA Gold people, having them come from Pro, is really an advantage to everybody. And then eventually there's the PIBA Gold function that we have, which is the done-for-you service. And this is where you're serious about owning a 10 to a 200 million plus company with full support, so that you decide what you do and don't want to do. We're handling everything else. When we sign an agreement with any of our PIBA Gold partners, it's like two people pricking their fingers, putting them together and letting the blood circulate between the two folks, because we're in it till we get that company for that. So if it takes a year, great. If it takes 2 years, well, it's a little bit long, but still happen. If it takes 3 years, we're not going anywhere till we get the deal done. And regardless of how long it takes, once we undertake a PIBA partnership, we're in it to a deal of their category that they signed on for closes. Now, small deals are a stepping stone to bigger deals. So as part of your final takeaway here, small deals eventually yield large deals, either because you buy them, you start to grow them, you grow by a second acquisition, a third acquisition, and eventually your small deals are parlayed into big deals. So you can start there and do it. If you're going to go into big deals, you need a serious team. The days of doing it totally by yourself are very limited. It just takes too much. There's too much that has to get done by people who know what they're doing in each and every step of the process. And in fact, NDFC through PIBA Gold is your unfair advantage in today's market. It's all here. It's all here. It's like an engine. Become a PIBA Gold partner. We hand you the keys to the car. You don't have to go through this incredible learning and building process, at least not at the same level if you're going to do it on your own. If you have an interest in learning more about PIBA Gold, write this name down. It's nationaldiversify.com. You already know. And Daniel, that is the person you're going to want to talk to. If you just want to learn more, stay close. Keep building your skills. Be ready. And at some point, we're going to connect, and we're going to either get it done for you, or you will find a way to nuance it and get it done for yourself. And if that's the case, we're all behind you in Bazaar Pro. We'll be there to answer your questions and help guide you through the process. But it is a little tough, guys. It really is.